The engine screamed before it died. Metal tore against metal, a sound that shouldn't exist in a machine this advanced. White smoke billowed from the prototype bay, acrid and choking. Engineers scattered like startled birds, their expensive suits flashing under emergency lights. The crowd that had been applauding seconds ago now pressed toward exits, phones raised recording disaster. Marcus Reed stood motionless near the back wall, hands buried in his jacket pockets. He recognized that sound. He'd heard it in his head 2 years ago when he'd designed the floor deliberately, a signature, buried so deep only its creator would know. His breathing slowed as chaos accelerated. Around him, the demonstration platform sat empty now, the revolutionary Aerosync engine reduced to smoking wreckage. A man in a charcoal suit shouted into a radio, his face crimson. Marcus knew that face. Derek Halloway, lead engineer. Patent holder, thief. Marcus stepped forward, instinct overriding caution. "I can help." "Everyone back!" A security guard's arm shot out, blocking him. "Sir, step away from the restricted area. I know what's wrong with it." Marcus's voice stayed level despite the adrenaline flooding his veins. "The thermal regulator, it's—" "Jesus Christ, not now." Derek's voice cut through the smoke, sharp and dismissive. His eyes landed on Marcus, recognition flickering with contempt. "Security, get the spectators out." "We don't need amateurs offering advice." The word amateur landed like a slap. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Not yet. The engine smoldered behind Derek, a monument to stolen genius destroying itself. Everything Marcus had warned about, everything he'd tried to prevent, unfolding exactly as he'd calculated. Derek turned away, already forgetting him. But Marcus didn't forget. He never did. 72 hours earlier, Marcus had stood in this same convention center, holding a coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The National Automotive Innovation Expo stretched across 3 football fields of polished concrete and glass. Prototype vehicles gleamed under theatrical lighting. Engineers in tailored blazers discussed torque ratios and carbon fiber compression. Everything smelled like money and ambition. Marcus adjusted his visitor badge, acutely aware of the grease still embedded under his fingernails despite 20 minutes of scrubbing. His navy button-down was clean but worn at the collar. He'd driven 11 hours from his shop in Detroit, sleeping in his truck to save on hotels. Reed's Auto Repair barely survived month to month. 3 employees, 2 lifts, and a customer base that knew Marcus could resurrect engines others pronounced dead. But resurrection didn't pay like innovation. It didn't open doors to rooms like this. His backpack held 6 notebooks filled with sketches, calculations, and dreams rendered in mechanical pencil. Hybrid cooling systems, regenerative combustion chains, designs that could revolutionize fuel efficiency if anyone with resources would listen. He'd been trying to be heard for 3 years. Marcus moved through the expo slowly, absorbing everything. A woman demonstrated magnetic suspension systems to a cluster of investors. A team from Munich unveiled concept turbines that hummed like music. He took notes, asked questions when presenters made eye contact, smiled when they didn't. At 34, he'd learned to navigate spaces that didn't want him. Stay polite, stay knowledgeable. Don't give them reasons to confirm their assumptions. His phone buzzed. A text from Janelle, his lead mechanic. "Customer asking about you. Says only you can fix his transmission. When you back?" Marcus typed a response, Monday. Hurled him off. He pocketed the phone and kept walking, hope and exhaustion warring in his chest. Somewhere in this building was someone who'd see past the surface, who'd recognize genius regardless of its packaging. He just had to find them. His father's voice echoed in memory. "Marcus, being right isn't enough. You gotta make them listen." Marcus reached the Innovation Showcase wing, where tomorrow's technology lived today, and stopped breathing. The display rose 12 feet high, all brushed aluminum and dramatic lighting. Bold letters across the top declared, Aerosync engine, the future of combustion efficiency. Marcus's vision tunneled. The cutaway engine behind the glass was his design. Every curve of the cooling jacket, every angle of the thermal regulator, identical to the sketches he'd drawn in his father's garage 2 winters ago. The hybrid compression system he'd calculated on napkins during slow days at the shop. His innovation, his creation, someone else's name on the patent placard. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone, photographing every detail. The technical specifications matched his notebooks perfectly. 43% reduction in thermal waste. Regenerative cooling through a triple loop system. Even the mounting brackets followed his unconventional asymmetric design. Impressive, isn't it? Marcus turned. A man in his 50s stood beside him, silver-haired and confident in an emerald green suit that probably cost more than Marcus's truck. His smile was practiced, corporate. Revolutionary work, the man continued. Derek Holloway is a genius. This engine will change the industry. Marcus's throat tightened. Derek Holloway designed this? Led the team personally. 2 years of development. Patent filed last spring. The man extended his hand. Thomas Brennan, VP of Engineering at Apex Motors. You are? Marcus Reed. He shook the offered hand automatically, his mind racing. Last spring, 6 months after Marcus had presented his sketches at the Detroit Innovation Networking event. 6 months after he'd talked enthusiastically with attendees, sharing ideas freely, believing in collaboration. 6 months after Derek Holloway had asked to photograph Marcus's notebook for inspiration. Mr. Brennan, a voice boomed across the floor. Derek Holloway approached, flanked by 2 younger engineers. His cobalt blue shirt was crisp, his confidence absolute. His eyes skipped over Marcus without recognition. Ready for tomorrow's demonstration. We are going to make history. I was just admiring your work, Brennan said. Derek's smile widened. Then his gaze landed on Marcus. Something flickered. Recognition, maybe guilt, before his expression hardened into condescension. Can we help you with something? Derek's tone suggested Marcus was blocking premium real estate. Marcus found his voice. This cooling system, the thermal regulator design. Where did the inspiration come from? Derek's laugh was sharp. 2 years of R&D and about 40 engineers smarter than anyone you've met. He glanced at Marcus's visitor badge. Reed's Auto Repair, Detroit. His eyebrows rose with theatrical sympathy. You fix oil changes and rotate tires, friend. Leave the real engineering to professionals. 2 nearby attendees chuckled. Marcus's jaw clenched. I'm saying I've seen this exact design before, have you? Derek's voice dripped with amusement. At another expo? In a journal? Funny, because we hold the patent. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a stage whisper others could still hear. Word of advice. Don't embarrass yourself claiming expertise you don't have. The mechanics and engineers aren't the same species. The chuckles grew louder. Brennan shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Marcus's hands curled into fists inside his pockets. Every instinct screamed to pull out his notebooks, to prove what he knew. But he recognized the trap. In this room, his word against Derek's wasn't a contest, it was a joke. Derek turned back to Brennan, dismissing Marcus with body language alone. Now about tomorrow's stress test parameters. Marcus stepped back, his heart pounding with something hotter than anger. The parking garage was cold and empty, and exactly what Marcus needed. He sat on the concrete ledge near his truck, hands shaking too much to grip his keys. The expo's muffled sounds filtered through steel and cement. Laughter, conversation, ambition. Everything he'd been excluded from. Mechanics and engineers aren't the same species. The words looped in his head, each repetition carving deeper. He'd heard variations before, from college advisors who'd suggested trade school instead of engineering programs he couldn't afford. From patent attorneys who'd quoted filing fees beyond his reach. From investors who'd praised his ideas and funded someone else's execution, but never this nakedly. Never this cruel. Marcus pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, opening photos of the AeroSync display. The evidence sat right there. His asymmetric mounting brackets, his triple-loop cooling system. His calculations made flesh in someone else's name. He scrolled to images of his own notebooks, dated entries from 2 years ago with identical schematics. Proof meant nothing without power. His father's toolbox sat in the truck bed. Battered red metal weathered by decades of honest work. Marcus stared at it, remembering hands stained with oil teaching him that engines were conversations. You listened to what they needed. You spoke the language of metal and combustion and precision. His father had died believing Marcus would be different. Would break through. Would be recognized. Marcus had believed it too. The phone buzzed. Janelle again. You good? You're usually chattier. He typed back, fine, just thinking, but he wasn't fine. Rage and helplessness warred in his chest, producing something cold and calculating. Derek had stolen his work, had mocked him publicly for recognizing his own creation, had turned Marcus's genius into entertainment for people who'd never greased their own hands. And tomorrow, Derek would demonstrate that stolen engine to industry leaders, securing contracts worth millions. Unless Marcus remembered something. A deliberate choice he'd made 2 years ago, when paranoia had whispered that sharing ideas was dangerous. He'd embedded a flaw in his design, a signature invisible to anyone who didn't understand the system's deeper architecture. The thermal regulator would fail under sustained maximum stress. Not immediately, not during normal operation, but pushed hard enough, long enough, the system would cascade into catastrophic overload. He'd built in a timer that only the Creator would know existed. Marcus stood, pocketing his phone. His hands had stopped shaking. Tomorrow's demonstration would push that engine to its limits. Derek would stand before investors and media, showcasing stolen genius, and Marcus would be there to watch it burn. Marcus didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his truck reviewing notebooks by flashlight, remembering the night everything had started. 3 years ago, his father's funeral had drawn 20 people to a cold chapel in Detroit. Samuel Reed, master mechanic, dead at 62 from a heart that gave out between brake jobs. Marcus had stood beside the closed casket, numb, holding a folded flag and a box of tools he didn't know how to inherit. The shop became his grief counselor. Marcus had grown up in that garage, learning engines before algebra. His father taught him to read combustion patterns like poetry, to diagnose problems by sound alone. But Samuel had also been a dreamer, sketching impossible improvements in margins of repair manuals, imagining systems that didn't exist yet. You got the mind for this, his father had said once, tapping Marcus's temple with an oil-stained finger. Not just fixing, creating. Don't waste it changing oil forever. After the funeral, Marcus had found boxes of his father's sketches. Incomplete ideas, revolutionary concepts abandoned for lack of time or resources. He'd started completing them, using his father's questions as foundations for his own answers. The hybrid cooling system emerged over 18 months of late nights and obsessive calculation. Marcus had realized that traditional engine cooling treated heat as waste. But what if heat was conversation? What if you could capture it, redirect it, use it to enhance rather than diminish performance? The triple-loop system was born from that question. He'd been so proud, so certain that sharing the innovation would open doors. The Detroit Innovation Networking event had seemed like destiny. Engineers and investors gathering to exchange ideas. Marcus had presented his sketches nervously, explaining the mathematics, fielding questions. Derek Halloway had been enthusiastic, asking to photograph the designs for inspiration on a project with similar principles. Marcus had said yes. 2 weeks later, he'd seen preliminary patent filings online, his asymmetric brackets, his thermal mathematics. Derek's name. He'd contacted a lawyer who'd quoted $15,000 to challenge the filing. Marcus had 700 in savings. The patent was approved 4 months later. Now Marcus sat in the truck staring at those original sketches. His father's handwriting in the margins, "Proud of you, son." Tomorrow Derek would demonstrate the engine publicly. Investors would sign contracts. The theft would be complete and permanent, unless the engine failed exactly as Marcus had designed it to. He'd embedded the flaw as insurance, never imagining he'd need it. A weakness in the thermal regulator that would manifest only under sustained stress. Fixable if you knew it existed. Catastrophic if you didn't. Derek didn't know. Marcus closed the notebook and leaned back, closing his eyes. His father's voice echoed, "Being right isn't enough, maybe, but being right when everyone else was wrong? That could be everything." Morning arrived with false optimism. The expo buzzed with anticipation for the keynote demonstration. Derek's AeroSync engine, facing the ultimate stress test before industry titans. Marcus entered through the main doors, credentials checked by security, who barely glanced at him. He'd slept 2 hours and mainlined coffee until his hands shook. His backpack held notebooks, his phone held evidence, and his chest held something harder than anger. Clarity. He moved through the crowd toward the main demonstration theater. Engineers filed into tiered seating, surrounding a central platform, where the AeroSync engine sat mounted on a dynamic testing rig. Cameras positioned at multiple angles would broadcast the demonstration to overflow rooms and streaming audiences. Derek stood near the engine, surrounded by Apex Motors executives. His ivory shirt was immaculate, his confidence absolute. Marcus found a seat in the upper tier, far from attention. He pulled out his phone, opening the photos of his notebooks again, side by side with shots of the display specs, identical, undeniable, except no one would believe him without a catastrophic reason to look. The theater lights dimmed. A woman in a blush-pink dress took the stage, introducing Derek Holloway as the visionary behind tomorrow's revolution. Applause rippled through the audience. Derek approached the microphone, smiling like a man who'd never doubted himself. "Thank you. What you're about to witness represents 2 years of dedicated innovation. The AeroSync engine doesn't just improve efficiency, it redefines what's possible." Marcus's jaw tightened. Derek continued his presentation, explaining the triple-loop cooling system without once mentioning where the core concept originated. He described the asymmetric mounting brackets as unconventional genius. He outlined performance metrics that Marcus had calculated on napkins. During slow Tuesday afternoons, the audience hung on every word. "Now," Derek said, gesturing to the testing rig, "we'll demonstrate sustained performance under maximum operational stress. Watch the thermal readings on the screen. You'll see stable temperatures even as we push beyond normal parameters." Technicians activated the engine. It roared to life, smooth and powerful. Thermal cameras projected heat signatures onto massive screens. Everything looked perfect. Marcus watched the regulator temperature. It climbed steadily as stress increased. 60% capacity, 70, 80. He knew what happened at 93% sustained load. Derek narrated the demonstration with showman flair, pointing out efficiency metrics that proved his claims. The audience murmured approval. Investors nodded. Cameras captured everything. 90% capacity. Marcus's heartbeat synced with the engine's rhythm. He designed that flaw 2 years ago as insurance against exactly this, someone stealing his work and claiming glory. The regulator would cascade into thermal runaway. The engine would destroy itself, and Derek would have no idea why. 92%. Marcus's hands gripped the armrests. He could stop this. Could shout a warning, explain the flaw, save the engine, and be escorted out as a disruptive crank making desperate claims. 93%. The thermal regulator's numbers flickered red. Derek didn't notice. He was describing future applications, painting visions of revolutionized transportation. The engine's tone changed, a frequency shift subtle enough that only someone who truly understood the system would hear. Marcus heard it. He closed his eyes, listening to his father's creation eating itself from within. The sound he'd designed 2 years ago, now screaming its creator's name, in a language only he could understand. The demonstration ended to thunderous applause. Derek's smile could power cities. The engine had survived, barely. Marcus had watched the thermal regulator peak at 94% before technicians throttled back, concluding the test. The cascade hadn't triggered. Not yet. But the damage was done internally, invisible to everyone except Marcus. That engine was a bomb now. A delayed failure waiting to detonate. Marcus pushed through the dispersing crowd, adrenaline overriding caution. He found Derek near the platform, surrounded by executives exchanging congratulations. Marcus approached from the side, keeping his voice low. "Mr. Holloway, I need 2 minutes." Derek turned, recognition dawning with irritation. "Persistent, aren't you?" He glanced at the executives. "Gentlemen, excuse me." One moment he stepped aside with Marcus' smile vanishing. "What do you want?" "That engine has a critical flaw in the thermal regulator. During the demonstration, you triggered a cascade that's still propagating. If you run it again at high capacity, it'll fail catastrophically." Derek's expression shifted from irritation to condescension. "Is that right? And how would a mechanic from Detroit know more about my engine than I do?" "Because I designed it." Marcus kept his voice steady. 2 years ago, you photographed my notebooks at the networking event. I embedded a signature flaw to protect my work, a weakness that manifests under sustained stress. Derek laughed, sharp and dismissive. "You think I stole your ideas? That's rich." He leaned closer, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Let me explain reality. You're a mechanic with delusions of grandeur. I'm an engineer with credentials, patents, and a team that developed this system through legitimate R&D. If you continue making these accusations, I'll have security remove you permanently and file harassment charges. I have proof." Marcus reached for his backpack. "My notebooks are dated by you." Derek's smile was ice. "You know what I have? Institutional backing, peer review, legal documentation. You have grease under your fingernails and conspiracy theories." He straightened his ivory shirt, dismissal radiating from every gesture. "Stay away from me and my project." "That's not advice, it's a warning." Derek walked back to the executives, leaving Marcus standing alone in the dispersing crowd. But Marcus wasn't empty-handed. His phone had recorded the entire conversation. Derek's threat, his refusal to listen, everything, maybe evidence would be enough. Maybe someone would care about timestamps and technical details, and the desperation in a mechanic's voice. Maybe tomorrow would be different. Marcus left the theater. Hope and anger tangled too tightly to separate. He'd tried. He'd warned. He'd offered a solution. Now the engine was Derek's problem. If only Derek knew what problem he actually had. Marcus arrived at the expo Sunday morning to find his credentials deactivated. The security guard swiped his badge twice, frowning at the error message. "Sorry, sir. This pass has been revoked. You'll need to speak with registration." Dread crystallized in Marcus's stomach. "Revoked? Why?" "Doesn't say. Registration office opens in 20 minutes. Marcus stepped aside, pulling out his phone. An email from Expo administration waited in his inbox, time-stamped 3 a.m. "Your attendance privileges have been suspended pending investigation of harassment complaints. Security will escort you from the premises if you attempt unauthorized entry." Below it, say a formal complaint filed by Derek Holloway. Participant Marcus Reed has engaged in repeated verbal harassment, made false accusations regarding proprietary technology, and demonstrated erratic behavior that poses a disruption risk. Marcus's hands shook as he read. Derek had moved first, had weaponized the system against him, before Marcus could speak to anyone with authority. Inside the convention center, preparations for today's final demonstration continued. The Aerosync engine would run again, this time for major investors making multi-million-dollar decisions. Maximum stress, maximum visibility, and the thermal cascade from yesterday's test was still propagating, invisible, unstoppable. Marcus approached the security desk. "I need to speak with someone about the demonstration. There's a safety issue. Sir, you need to leave the premises." The guard's tone allowed no negotiation. "The engine in Theater A is going to fail. People could get hurt. Sir." The guard stood, hand moving toward his radio. "Leave now or I call for escort." Marcus backed away, mind racing. He couldn't enter. Couldn't warn anyone. Couldn't stop what he'd inadvertently set in motion. Through the glass doors he saw the crowd building. Engineers, investors, media, all gathering to witness Derek's triumph. His phone buzzed with messages from Janelle. "Where are you? Shop's crazy today. Need you." Marcus stared at the messages, then at the expo entrance. He could walk away, drive back to Detroit, let Derek's arrogance devour itself, but innocent people were inside. Engineers who'd done nothing except believe the wrong person. His father's voice whispered, "You don't fix engines for credit. You fix them because they matter." Through the glass he heard it. Distant but unmistakable, the engine starting up. Applause. Derek's voice magnified through speakers. Then another sound. Metal stress. High frequency. Wrong. The crowd noise changed pitch. Confusion. Then alarm. Smoke began filtering through the convention center's ventilation. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Not Janelle this time. A news alert. Breaking explosion at National Automotive. Expo. His blood went cold. Marcus stood frozen on the sidewalk as sirens screamed toward the convention center. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cruisers converging from 3 directions. Through the glass doors he saw smoke thickening. People streaming toward exits. Security guards shouted instructions. Somewhere inside, the Aerosync engine had finally destroyed itself, exactly as he'd designed it to. He'd tried to warn them, had been thrown out for trying. His phone buzzed relentlessly. News alerts, Janelle calling, text messages from customers wondering where he was. The noise felt distant, underwater, drowned by the sound of his own failure. Marcus walked to his truck and sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel. He could leave, should leave. This wasn't his responsibility anymore. Derek had stolen his work, mocked him publicly, weaponized the system to silence him. Whatever happened now was karma, justice, Derek's arrogance consuming itself. Except it wasn't just Derek inside. Through the windshield, Marcus watched paramedics rushing in. He thought about the engineers he'd seen yesterday. Young ones asking questions, taking notes, learning. People like him once, believers in innovation and progress. They hadn't stolen anything. They'd just trusted the wrong name on a patent. His father's voice cut through the static in his head. "You don't fix engines for credit, Marcus. You fix them because they matter, because someone needs them fixed, because you're the only one who can." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his father's old wrench in the toolbox behind him. 26 years that tool had diagnosed impossible problems, had saved engines everyone else pronounced dead. His father had never walked away from something broken, even when no one thanked him, even when they looked through him like he was invisible, even when they questioned whether he belonged. Marcus opened his eyes and reached for the door handle. He turned back toward the convention center, smoke still rising, chaos still unfolding. Somewhere inside was the engine he'd created, the system only he fully understood, the flaw only he could fix. They'd tried to erase him, to make him small, to prove he didn't belong in their world of credentials and patents and polished flaws. But genius didn't need permission to exist. It only needed courage to act. Marcus found a service entrance near the loading docks, propped open by evacuating staff. He slipped inside against the flow of people rushing out. The smoke was thicker here, acrid with burning coolant and overheated metal. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. Alarms shrieked from every direction. Marcus pulled his shirt over his nose and moved toward Theater A, navigating by memory and instinct. A security guard grabbed his arm. "Wrong way!" "Everyone out! I'm a mechanic. I can help with the engine." Marcus kept moving. "So you can't—" "People are hurt in there because nobody listened. You want more injuries or you want solutions?" The guard hesitated, radio crackling with urgent voices. Finally released Marcus's arm. "Theater A, 5 minutes, then you're out." Marcus ran. The theater doors stood open, smoke pouring into the hallway. Inside, the Aerosync engine sat center stage, coolant spraying from ruptured lines, metal housing warped from thermal stress. The testing rig had partially collapsed. Engineers huddled near the exits, faces pale with shock. Derek Halloway knelt beside the wreckage, suit covered in soot, hands shaking as he tried unsuccessfully to shut down systems already gone haywire. 2 other engineers shouted conflicting advice, treating it like a standard overheat. They were making it worse. Marcus scanned the damage, his mind processing failure cascades instantly. The thermal regulator had melted through its housing. Secondary cooling loops were backfeeding pressure into primary systems. The combustion chamber was moments from rupturing completely. He saw the problem because he'd designed it, and he saw the solution because he'd imagined this exact scenario. "Stop!" Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. "You're feeding pressure into a closed loop. You'll trigger a secondary explosion." Derek's head snapped up, recognition and rage flashing across his face. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Saving your life if you shut up and listen." Marcus moved toward the engine, hands already reaching for manual shut-off valves. The thermal regulator cascade failed. "You can't stop it from the control panel. You need to bypass the primary coolant loop and reroute through auxiliary channels." "Security!" Derek shouted, but his voice cracked with desperation. An older engineer near the exit stepped forward, silver-haired, gold vest beneath his soot-stained shirt. Marcus recognized him from yesterday. Thomas Brennan, the VP who'd watched Derek mock him. "Let him try," Brennan said quietly. "He's not qualified." Derek started. "Neither are you if you can't stop this." Brennan's voice carried authority that Derek couldn't override. He looked at Marcus. "You know this system?" "Better than anyone." Marcus was already moving, hands tracing coolant lines, identifying the bypass route. "I need someone who knows standard valve protocols now." Brennan moved to Marcus's side. "Tell me what you need." Marcus pointed to 3 valve clusters. "On my signal, close valve 7 and 9, open 11. That'll reroute coolant through auxiliary paths and relieve pressure on the damaged regulator." "That's not in the design specs," Derek protested weakly. "No," Marcus said. "Finger's already working the main shutoff. It's in my design specs." "The ones you stole." Their eyes locked for one crystalline moment. Then Marcus turned back to the engine. "Ready, 3, 2, execute." Brennan's hands moved with practiced precision. Valves closed. Others opened. The engine's death scream shifted pitch. "Now kill combustion chamber 3, Marcus instructed. "The warped housing is feeding heat back into the system." They worked in synchronized silence, Marcus directing, Brennan executing. 2 minutes, 3. The shrieking metal sounds began to quiet. Pressure gauges dropped from red to yellow. Coolant stopped spraying. The engine shuddered once, twice, then fell silent except for the hiss of equalizing pressure. Marcus stepped back, breathing hard, shirt soaked with sweat and coolant. His hands trembled now that the crisis had passed. The theater sat in shocked silence. "How did you know?" Brennan's voice broke the silence. Marcus met his gaze. "Because I designed this system. 2 years ago. Every component you saw fail. I calculated that exact failure mode." "That's insane," Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're a mechanic making desperate claims." "Am I?" Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He opened the photos of his notebooks. These are dated entries from 24 months ago, before your patent filing. He held the screen toward Brennan. The asymmetric mounting brackets, the triple-loop cooling architecture, the thermal regulator design, all of it. My work. Brennan took the phone, scrolling through images. His expression shifted from skepticism to concentration to something harder. Anyone can fake timestamps, Derek protested, but he'd stepped back, distance growing between him and his lies. Can they fake this? Marcus pulled out his physical notebook from his backpack, flipping to a specific page. Section 4, paragraph 3. The thermal regulator flaw. I documented it deliberately as a signature, a way to prove the design was mine if it was ever stolen. He held the notebook open. In his handwriting, dated 26 months prior, intentional weakness. Thermal regulator will cascade fail at 93% sustained capacity, fixable via auxiliary bypass. Signature flaw proves origin. Brennan read the passage twice, looked at Derek. Back to Marcus, the demonstration yesterday, Brennan said slowly. You pushed it to 94% and triggered the cascade, Marcus confirmed. It takes 18 to 24 hours to propagate fully. I tried to warn him yesterday. Tried to warn security this morning. No one would listen. More engineers had gathered near the stage now, drawn by the silence more than the chaos. Someone's phone was recording. Everything was being documented. Derek's face had drained of color. I developed this with my team. We had institutional resources. You had my sketches. Marcus's voice stayed level, factual, devastating. From the Detroit Innovation Networking event. You asked to photograph my notebook for inspiration. 2 weeks later, you filed for the patent. I couldn't afford to challenge it legally. $15,000 minimum. I had $700 in savings. Show me the original patent filing, Brennan said, voice tight with controlled anger. And your application, if you made one. Marcus pulled up documents on his phone. His rejected provisional patent application. Denied for lacking institutional affiliation and peer review. Dated 14 months before Derek's approval. Brennan compared them side by side. The similarities were undeniable. Every major innovation in Derek's revolutionary design appeared in Marcus's earlier filing. This is... Brennan's jaw clenched. This is theft. Institutional fraud. It's a misunderstanding, Derek tried, but his voice had become pleading. Similar ideas, convergent innovation. The signature flaw, Brennan interrupted. If you developed this independently, explain why Marcus's documented weakness appears in your engine. Derek opened his mouth. Closed it. No words came. An engineer near the back spoke up. I want to see those notebooks. All of them, others echoed the demand. Show us the calculations. Let's see the original sketches. Compare the handwriting. Marcus handed his notebooks to Brennan. 6 volumes. 2 years of work. Grief translated into innovation. His father's dreams completed by his son's hands. Brennan opened the first volume. Inside the front cover in faded ink, property of Samuel Reed. These ideas belong to my son Marcus. May they take him further than they took me. The date, 4 years ago. Brennan's hand trembled slightly as he turned pages. Calculations, sketches, evolution of ideas from rough concept to refined system. The triple-loop cooling design emerging across 50 pages of iterative improvement. Someone call legal, Brennan said quietly. And campus security. Mr. Halloway, you're suspended pending investigation. You can't, Derek started. I can and will. Brennan's voice carried steel. If these notebooks are authenticated, you've committed patent fraud, institutional theft. You've endangered lives by implementing a system you didn't understand. He looked at Marcus. He knew the signature flaw, knew how to fix it. Only the original designer would have that knowledge. Derek's shoulders sagged. Whatever fight he'd brought was dying in real time, cremated by evidence and witnesses and his own arrogance. Security arrived. Not the expo guards this time, actual police. Brennan explained the situation in clipped professional sentences. Derek was escorted toward the exit, head down, empire crumbling with every step. He didn't look at Marcus as he passed, but Marcus watched him go, feeling something more complex than satisfaction. Justice tasted like smoke and coolant, and 2 years of silence finally ending. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in his shop beneath fluorescent lights that had never seemed quite bright enough. Now they felt perfect. The investigation had been swift and thorough. Patent office reviews, handwriting analysis, testimony from attendees at the networking event who remembered Marcus's presentation. Derek's own team members admitting they'd never understood the core architecture, had only implemented blueprints Derek provided. The patent had been invalidated. Derek's position terminated. Apex Motors issued public apologies and private settlement offers. Marcus's provisional application was fast-tracked and approved. But more than that, people had listened. Engineers had reached out. Investors who'd watched the viral video of Marcus fixing the engine while Derek crumbled. Companies interested in licensing the AeroSync system from its actual creator. The shop door chimed. Thomas Brennan entered, looking strange and comfortable in casual clothes instead of corporate suits. He'd become something unexpected, an ally, maybe a friend. Came to check on you, Brennan said, glancing around the modest space. 3 lifts, tool chests, a customer's sedan on blocks. How are you holding up? Still processing, Marcus admitted. He wiped his hands on a rag. Habits from a lifetime of honest work. 3 companies want to license the design. 2 universities want me to lecture. Reporters keep calling. You deserve all of it. Brennan's voice held quiet certainty. Your innovation could legitimately change the industry. And what you did at the expo, saving people despite how you'd been treated, that says more about your character than any credential. Marcus looked at his father's toolbox, sitting where it always had in the corner. Red paint faded, latches worn smooth, but still holding everything that mattered. My father used to say you don't fix engines for credit, Marcus said quietly. You fix them because they need fixing, because you're the only one who can. He was right. Brennan paused. Apex Motors wants to fund your research. Properly this time. Your name on the patents. Your terms. We'll cover legal costs retroactively and moving forward. Marcus turned, meeting Brennan's gaze. Why? You could find other engineers, people with credentials and degrees and institutional backing. Because I watched you save an engine while the expert fell apart. Brennan's smile was slight but genuine. And because genius doesn't need permission to exist. It just needs people willing to recognize it. The shop phone rang. Janelle answered, laughing at something a customer said. Normal sounds. Familiar sounds. The foundation Marcus had built through years of invisible work. He thought about his father, who died before seeing his son's innovations come to life, who'd sketched impossible dreams in repair manual margins, who'd believed expertise lived in hands and hearts, not diplomas. I'll consider the offer, Marcus said, but I'm keeping the shop. This place matters. I'd expect nothing less. Brennan extended his hand. Marcus shook it, feeling the difference in their grips, office soft versus work hardened, and knowing both had value. After Brennan left, Marcus returned to the sedan on blocks. Transmission rebuild, simple work compared to revolutionary cooling systems, but it needed doing. Someone depended on him. He picked up his father's old wrench, still stained with decades of oil and effort, held it like a prayer. The world had tried to make him invisible, had stolen his voice and called it progress, had built walls and credentials and systems designed to keep people like him outside. But genius didn't need permission. It only needed courage to exist, despite everything trying to erase it. Marcus got to work, hands steady, purpose clear. Some engines broke because they were flawed. Others broke because the wrong hands tried to control what they didn't understand. He'd learned the difference, and he'd made damn sure the world learned it too. 6 months after the expo, Marcus sat in his shop during the quiet hour before opening. New equipment lined the walls now, diagnostic systems, precision tools, technology that made complex work simpler. But his father's toolbox still occupied the same corner, red paint faded, a monument to everything that mattered before money arrived. The AeroSync engine existed in 3 production facilities now, licensed properly, attributed correctly. Marcus's name on every patent. His face in engineering journals. His voice finally heard after years of silence. But what he remembered most wasn't the vindication. It was the moment he'd stepped back into that smoke-filled theater despite being thrown out. Despite knowing no one would thank him, despite every reason to walk away and let arrogance consume itself, he'd gone back because broken things needed fixing, because expertise without compassion was just ego, because his father had taught him that being right meant nothing if you didn't use it to help. The world built walls around genius, requiring credentials, institutional backing, the right schools and names and networks. It confused polish with competence, pedigree with knowledge, confidence with truth. Marcus had learned that systems designed to recognize talent often only recognized mirrors of themselves. But real innovation didn't ask permission. It didn't wait for approval from people who couldn't see past their own assumptions. It existed in notebooks filled during slow afternoons, in calculations made with borrowed pencils, in minds that refused to accept that genius belonged only to the privileged. His father's words had proven prophetic. Being right isn't enough. You gotta make them listen. Marcus had made them listen. Not with credentials or connections, but by being the only person who understood the system deeply enough to save it. By proving that expertise lived in understanding, not in who said you were allowed to understand. The shop door chimed. His first customer of the day, a woman with a struggling transmission, hoping the mechanic everyone talked about could work his magic. Marcus smiled and reached for his father's wrench. Some people saw a mechanic. Others saw an engineer. A few saw the truth, that labels mattered less than the work itself. And the work, fixing what was broken, building what didn't exist, refusing to be invisible even when the world insisted, that work continued. Because genius didn't need permission to exist. It only needed the courage to speak when everyone else demanded silence. Marcus got to work, hands steady, knowing his father would have been proud, not of the patents or the recognition or the vindication, but of the moment he'd walked back into the smoke. That was the engine that mattered most.